Anastasia. So the same situation exists in politics as with the spiritual aspect of society's life. If such a tool of influence over masses as politics is abolished in the world society, then in fact, such phenomena as power will disappear from it, as well as jobs of freeloaders, that is, those who profit from public property. And clever, honest people who truly care about the life and destinies of nations not in words, but in deeds, who unfortunately are not that many in the political system, will continue to help the society just as conscientiously and unselfishly once the institution of the political power is abolished. For example, they will teach people the basics of public self-government and control, will apply their expertise in the good deeds of society, and so on. Although such people in politics, just like people of God in religion, are few, still they exist. For them, honor, conscience, a sincere service to society, devotion and commitment to what they're doing are not just words, but a way of being, where their life is placed on the altar of service to humankind. Rigdon. Yes, this is a real feat, to be in the system and still remain a human being. And the help of these honest and clever people will be significant for society. It is necessary that the changes take place not in a particular country, but everywhere among nations of the entire world. Then this process will be difficult to stop. Certainly, it is necessary that the majority of the people in the world get inspired with this idea, that people become more mature in knowledge and participate more actively in the positive transformation of all the spheres of society, starting with their country and ending with the world community. Mankind must unite. Only by joining forces can people build an entirely new world society where the truth will reign and where there will be no place for any regime as a means of violence over people. Then, in this united world community, there will be neither priests, nor politicians, nor presidents, that is, those people who rule over nations. Incidentally, the word president also had appeared in society at the suggestion of the archons, who are fans of double meanings. They did not name this position of the leader of a group, for example, preamble, from the Latin word preambulus, meaning the one who goes in front. They reserve this word for the advancement of their affairs and use it to denote the introduction of legislative acts, declarations, or international documents controlled by Freemasons. While the position of the head of executive power who governs the people was called the president, which when translated from the Latin praesidens literally means the one who sits in front, in essence blocking the movement of people. Suffice it to look at how many presidents of various corporations, companies, and academies of sciences we have in the world today. I'm not even talking about politics, but the essence is the same. As priests implement their power in the name of God, so do politicians, while in the presidential chairs of their countries, exercise their power in the name of the people. For the first time, the archons tested the word president on the consciousness of the masses by way of the title of head of nation during the War for Independence of the American colonies. Remember, I told you about it. Anastasia. Is this when the archons directed and sponsored their project to create the most free and democratic country in the world? Yes, of course. I wrote this information down in the book Sensei 4. They devised their operations carefully, planned for many years ahead, and skillfully used those same signs and symbols, and even names, which influence the masses at the subconscious level. Rigdon. When the majority of people show competence in these questions as well, these problems will disappear as such. People themselves should exclude in all spheres of their life any possibility of manifestation of the animal nature in a person, shielding themselves in society this way from submission to the will of the animal mind. It is necessary to set the spiritual vector of development for mankind thanks to participation and efforts of each person. That is, to create a healthy environment for the regeneration of the spiritual nature in a person and its blossoming, as well as for the popularization of cultural and moral values in the entire global community. When people themselves and the world community abolish the kind of institutions that imply the very notion of power, then many artificially created problems will disappear. The management of society should belong to society itself and not to the archons and their representatives. In the united society, there should be no borders at all. All people in the world should live in space in which moving about is absolutely unrestricted. That is, to have every opportunity to move absolutely freely on the planet without limitations. There should be no conditions for the emergence of strife among people, including ethnic conflicts. There are national cultures of the peoples of the world which contain various traditions and knowledge of humanity. But there is also the supreme concept, the spiritual, which unites people of all nationalities and which, for example, in the Russian language is known by the word Человек. Человек meaning man, person, human. By the way, the word Человек itself is anything but simple. Cello originally meant supreme, and that is why in the old days the word indicated a forehead. And the word vek stands for power, and it originally meant filled with power, eternal. Человек, human or person, stands for the one who is filled with, full of, the supreme, spiritual power. And the real human, Человек, or the primordial human, person, is the filled one in whom this supreme, eternal power, the spiritual nature, dominates. So all the questions should be decided together by people themselves, starting with local village councils and ending at the world level. And this process should be absolutely open to all the participants of society. Modern technologies allow this stipulation to be implemented in practice. Moreover, all these questions of the society life should be discussed and decided in their spare time off work. Such a system of a self-governing society will work only when people themselves take on the responsibility for improvement of life of the whole society and express their readiness to spend their personal time to participate in any way they can in the matters of society, including collaborative creation on a regular basis. This is equivalent to when a person controls his thoughts and desires from the animal nature, and when he assumes responsibility not just for controlling himself in these matters, but also in working on creation of kind thoughts, actions, and deeds from the spiritual nature. Also, in society, there should not even exist such a notion as regime of secrecy in the matters of self-government of society. First of all, this concerns funding, that is, distribution and order of using resources. Now in the world, most of the information about the flow of funds is inaccessible to the public. As a rule, in the countries, this concealment is justified by state secrets involving the matters of national security, economic, political interests, and so on. But where the money is actually going, people do not know. Why does this happen? It is because world political and priestly gangs exist, and there is a struggle for power and control of financial streams. Under this guise of secrecy, politicians pass laws that are favorable for their rule and their business and plunder the state budget, while people continue to live in poverty. The same thing happens also at the world level among states, only this theft takes place already on a larger scale. If the institutions of political and priestly power are abolished in the world, secrets will vanish as well. When the world society becomes united in its creative processes and spiritual aspirations, the concept of secrecy will disappear. Society itself will simply decide what expenditure items are a priority and what their funds should be spent on in the first place in order to improve life in it. And each person of the world community should be able to monitor what exactly the funds have been used for and what needs they have been spent on to the last penny. Basically, to create such conditions that there is not a single loophole for stealing public funds or self-serving profiteering off them. Resolving the issues of self-government of the world society should be open and transparent at all levels. Now people do not participate in this process not only on a global scale, but even in their own country. Let's take a more or less loyal example, the Slavic countries. In the present system, people have delegated their rights to deputies who, having got into power, sit there for years in immunity, getting a bunch of benefits and privileges. For the most part, these deputies defend their personal interests or interests of some corporations which belong to priests and politicians, those in power. Thus, they operate with the power from the people, acting on behalf of the people or supposedly in their name, which has nothing to do with addressing these questions. By the way, the word deputy itself is also derived from a dead language, one of the favorites of archons, Latin. Deputatus, deputar, means to point, to intend. Please note, this person is not chosen, but is appointed, sent from above by those in power. Basically, that's how it was in the past. In the ancient Greece, for example, the name deputy was given to a servant of a priest whom the latter sent with holy orders to Delphi or to Olympus. And in ancient Christian church, the name deputy was given to one of the clergymen who was walking in front of the patriarch, clearing the way for him. In the new global community, oriented towards the spiritual vector of development, there must be no permanent representatives at all, like present-day deputies and such. If it is necessary to delegate one's authorized representatives to public meetings to communicate the opinion of people of this or that area, then certainly. But these individuals should really be elected from the people according to their personal and moral qualities, the level of responsibility and professionalism, and certain deeds which they have already undertaken for society. These representatives should be deprived of any benefits and privileges. They must carry out public activities at their own expense in their spare leisure time without receiving any material or other compensation or any advantages over other participants of society. Moreover, only when this person improves the living conditions of all the participants of the society, together with everyone, he improves life for himself as well. As the result of creation of such conditions, the current issues of society life will be dealt with by honest, intelligent people who are ready to sacrifice their personal time, not for themselves, but for the sake of service to society, in some sense to the detriment of their material life, receiving nothing in return. Naturally, society will control the resolution of such issues and formulate the priorities. And the most important, life-supporting issues should be addressed by the entire world community. By the way, modern technology makes it possible to hold such open public meetings in real time, without costly trips and gatherings, and solve everything easily at the local level. This not only saves a lot of time and funds, allowing prompt action on manageable issues, but what is equally important, the openness of such online meetings to the public also eliminates unnecessary mass gatherings and excludes secret games and lobbying of private interests to the detriment of society. Anastasia. All right, voting, control of vote count and data verification, prompt resolution of issues, and voicing of different views All this can really be done even online. But what if someone wants to monopolize digital and online technologies into private hands and thus create an instrument of power for themselves? Rigdon. If society itself controls and thwarts any attempts to monopolize digital, online, or other technologies, as well as means of communication, this will not happen. And on the whole, while building such a society, it should be taken into account that all the strategic and life-sustaining enterprises and their resources should belong to society. This applies to the energy sector, financial institutions, banks, and so on, production and sale of medications and medical equipment, field development and mining operations, and also large industrial, agricultural, and scientific enterprises. All these should belong to the entire world community. Ownership of all this by private capital must not be allowed. In other words, for all of it in one way or another to be in private hands or belong to any particular individuals or groups. Only under these conditions is it possible to avoid corruption, rising prices, and financial crises. Society itself will set prices that are acceptable for living, will define the quality of services, and so on. Otherwise, if nothing changes, it will be as it is now, if not worse. That is, corruption will thrive, as well as various scams, purchase and sale of air, unconscionable loans, inflation, and all the other traps of the animal mind in the area of free market relationships. It is enough to look at the modern world. All the collapses and sharp rises of national and international currencies, various world economic, food, political, and other crises, all this is artificial. All this is done by people. It is just that someone creates conditions for this and earns incredible capitals from it, while someone else loses his shirt during these artificially stimulated processes. In a normal human society, this is unacceptable. Anastasia. You have mentioned that financial institutions must belong to the entire world society. So this implies that people will still deal with money in one form or another. Rigdon. Money is an equivalent of exchange, an equivalent in the sense of having power, from the Latin aqueous, meaning equal, and valentis, as having a meaning, power. This power is a derivative from the material world, and there is no escaping it. A human lives in the material world and resides in the physical body, and the latter is subject to the laws of a three-dimensional world. That is, the physical body has to be fed, dressed, kept clean. It is necessary to satisfy the required life-supporting needs, fight its diseases, and so on. For this purpose, of course, food, medicine, clothes, and other items of the material world are needed. Therefore, a person needs to earn the means for daily living needs, which support his existence in the body. Anastasia. But as long as money is in use in any form, there will be a division into rich and poor, as history shows. Besides, wealth implies the existence of private business, and therefore ownership. Rigdon. As for the rich and poor, society must create such conditions for its existence that there is no poverty in it at all. At the present level of technology, all this is quite possible to achieve: to feed all the people, turn the desert into a blooming garden, clean even polluted waters and make them fit for use, and use alternative energy sources instead of fossil fuels. All these technologies already exist, but they're only available to few. Most people in the world do not know about it. This information is concealed on purpose, and the development of such progressive technologies is restrained artificially all over the world by the order of the world's priests. Why is this done? So that those same archons can keep their power and the political levers of influence in the world society, continue to exploit billions of people, increase tension in the world, and keep most people in fear of falling below the poverty line. For when the consciousness of the masses is busy with issues of survival, it is much easier to manipulate and control them and incline the choice of people in favor of implementation of the animal mind's will. So when building a new society, it is necessary to make it so that poverty as a phenomenon does not exist on the planet at all. It is essential that people are provided with all the necessary things and that there is only medium and high level of prosperity. If a person is a workaholic, he is welcome to earn. Honest private business is quite acceptable, for example, providing some services to the public, but in no way is it acceptable to own factories and steamboats, that is, large enterprises, monopolies, and entire industries that support the life of society. There must be clear restrictions on wealth. The maximum capitalization of one family as a social unit should not exceed $10 million in monetary value, according to today's prices, including all tangible and fixed assets. And even that is a lot. For now, I'm naming too high a number only so as not to shock those people who have a much larger capital. These funds are more than enough to support a family, and excess, that is, family income that exceeds this sum, must go towards the needs of society. In other words, a person will not get rich from this, and at the same time, he will help other people. After all, since ancient times, it has been known that the true riches of a hardworking person are in his spiritual wealth. And in the society where universal human, spiritual, and moral values will dominate, such actions and examples of a person must be made prestigious. After all, what drives rich people in the world today? Is it the thirst for money itself? No. They're driven by the banal desire from the animal nature to show off to others. Like he has a better car, a better house, and even his socks cost much more than a neighbor earns in a month. All this is ridiculous. It's all nonsense, which has been imposed by the consumer society and the fashion that the clever create to deceive the foolish, so that it would be easier to swindle them out of their money. It is unlimited capital that breeds aggression in society, provokes envy, the desire to manipulate other people, and promotes domination of the animal nature in a person. In a normal civilized society, this must not happen at all. This is not nice and is disreputable. But it should be cool, respectable, and prestigious to help society and people, and not simply to feed someone one time or give toys once only, but to provide real, regular, practical help to villages, towns, regions, and so on. That is, do what one can to help society. Anastasia. How can people in responsible positions be protected from the temptation of using their status? Rigdon. Elementary. The executive bureaucracy that deals with the current affairs of society should be reduced to the necessary minimum and prevented as best as possible from having any opportunities to use their official position for personal, private interests. In other words, it is necessary to create such conditions for work of people in these positions that would exclude any possibility of being tempted by power, status, or material gain. Moreover, to make it so that people could constantly monitor, including in real-time mode, the activity of functionaries, that is, nomenclature employees of the administrative machinery, and the very process of performance by officials of their duties must be made so open to the public that these people would not be able to exercise the qualities of their animal nature in their positions. Then functionaries will truly become public servants, that is, they will conscientiously serve people and perform their duties honestly. Anastasia. This is certainly good, but personally, I cannot imagine how this will look in real life. Rigdon, do not worry. There are many intelligent professional people in every area of the life of society, and in this one as well, who, when they embrace the general idea, will be able to, upon joining forces with like-minded people, not only in their own country, think everything through sensibly to the slightest detail. If people, each person whom this information has not left indifferent, do not sit back and do nothing, but start to put things in order, at least in the professional and other areas of life of society that are more familiar to them, then sooner or later they will succeed. People themselves will create a system that will block all the possible loopholes and any possibilities for the manifestation of any corruption in society, especially in public positions. By virtue of having work experience in a particular field, knowing its pitfalls, keeping a close watch, and controlling their animal nature, they will think it through how to exclude every possibility, all preconditions for the creation of conditions that tempt a person. Anastasia. All right, and how will the public control and manage, for instance, science? After all, science is diverse, and in such specific matters, one should really be an expert, or at least understand what is discussed, and choose promising directions of its development. Rigdon, there are specialists, scientists who pursue one field of science or another and develop it. Society provides funds for that field depending on how important, necessary, and impactful it is for the entire world society today. Society should take care of its savings like a careful owner and spend funds on what is really necessary. In science, for example, it is necessary to eliminate instances of allocation of funds to those who crave to have any power over people, who, as people say, are engaged in science window dressing, but at the same time do nothing useful. It is necessary to liberate scientific environment of such people or transfer them to another job and create the conditions there under which society would benefit from them. I have already said that science is the process of knowing the truth. It should not be a means of achieving power. A specialist must do his work conscientiously and have the appropriate conditions for life and proper professional activity. Generally, in any branch and sphere of life, it is necessary to create such conditions that there would not even be possibilities for the manifestation of domination of the animal nature, so that all information would be open to people and society would make major decisions together. The community must take care of each person, and the person must take care of the community. It is necessary to use this characteristic of the human nature, imitation. Imitation is an instinct of the animal nature in a human, but you won't get rid of it because we reside in a material body and live in the material world. This instinct should simply be used correctly. For example, when it becomes fashionable and popular in society to do good, to selflessly help people, gratuitously serve the public good, to possess such qualities as honesty, responsibility, and conscientiousness, in general, to be a real human being, this will be taken up by many as a result of imitation. But most importantly, these ideas will pervade new generations for whom such human aspirations, cultural and moral values, and the dominance of the spiritual nature will become quite natural norms of life. This means that for new generations, it will be easier to overcome their animal nature and engage in their personal spiritual growth, which naturally will be reflected in the perfection of the world community itself. Anastasia. Yes, it really is an absolutely new model of humankind, of which people have dreamt for a long time as an ideal of the civil society. It's just that they imagined all this narrow-mindedly, within the limits of desires from the animal nature. Now I understand why they didn't manage to bring this idea to life. People tried to create such a society not from the perspective of their true spiritual nature, but from the perspective of the material system of power and control, which one way or another overlaps with the programs of will of the animal mind. In most cases, they documented even the very idea of a new social order with infusion of their animal nature desires. Rigdon: quite right. But here's what I want to say in this regard. In our time, humanity has, for the first time in history, during the course of all of its existence, such a unique opportunity: creation of a self-governing, united world community with the spiritual vector of development. Previously, some 30 to 50 years ago, the implementation of this idea on a global scale would have been impossible, since there were no technical conditions and no availability to the majority of people of interactive communication via the now familiar to many means of communications, for example, mobile communication and the Internet. In their historical time, individual groups of those initiated into the primordial knowledge tried to transform society. I mean, for instance, Imhotep and his people, or the Knights Templar. And for some time, they managed to improve the life of people of their country, and even several states, at least a little bit, and to give many personalities an opportunity to develop spiritually during their short human lives. But all these are individual cases, practice of which later did not develop properly, because all this was done under the conditions of existence of the rule of politicians and priests over society, and more precisely, in the conditions of existence of an artificially created priestly system of control of mankind, according to programs of will of the animal mind. And now humanity has the only realistic chance of saving themselves and their future. Today, in the human society, the animal mind is reaching its apogee, a triumph over human thinking. Just look at the speed with which the consumerist format of thinking is being imposed upon the world. A little more, and all the spiritual stimuli will be destroyed or substituted both in society and in the consciousness of an individual. And basically, the fast pace of overall introduction of accessible technical means of communication among the peoples around the world, and popularization of minimum acceptable literacy in these matters for the public is exactly the work of global conductors of the animal mind for the purpose of organizing subsequent total control over mankind and submission of the latter to its will. But this is also a weakness of the animal mind. Mankind has a unique opportunity to use the same tools and the technical base prepared by it in order to self-organize and unite, directly oppose the animal mind, and create a free society on the planet. Now there is a unique opportunity to turn over the monad. Otherwise, a little longer, and it will be too late. For everything depends on the human choice.